Well, good evening, everyone. We're really pleased to have Toots Zynsky join us tonight. Toots.
Thank you. It's nice to be here. It was a wonderful surprise to meet you all at Seven Stars Bakery.
Who would have thought this would be
about a
happening?
month ago. I had no idea it would result in
If you ever run into me at
podcast.
Seven Stars Bakery, be careful. I'll come after you, and I'll make sure you end up on this podcast.
Only if you're interesting.
For those who notice, this is one of Toots's artworks. I think it's absolutely stunning. So, this is based on two birds, right?
It's based on two different Gouldian finches, of which there are many iterations of color. I started working on a series of endangered species of birds about 4 years ago. I had been home to walk my family's property, and which is surrounded by marshland. It's a woodland surrounded by marshland, so there were always just an amazing amount of different kinds of birds there, and so many that Audubon used to bring bird watching groups to our property several times a year because there were waterfowl, there were woodland birds, there were birds that came every year to our pond, like wood ducks. They were amazing, and Baltimore orioles that came every year to our elm tree, and yeah, beautiful, and red-winged blackbirds that have a really pretty song because the marshland had cat-o'-nine-tails. And so I went for a long walk on the property. It was a beautiful late spring day, I think. And all of a sudden I realized I hadn't heard a bird. And I thought, how strange. What's wrong here, And then I thought, I'm probably making too much noise. I've become such a city slicker. So I sat down for a while and just waited and was really quiet and still nothing. And I walked all the way to the, up the peninsula in the middle of that extends out into the marshland and still nothing out in the marshland. And I thought, this is really something. What's wrong here?
Not good.
So when I went home to Providence that evening, I started Googling, all the different birds that I had known, the first being the Baltimore oriole, and found out that most of them were endangered or threatened, at least in that area. And it was stunning. So I started making, I think the first one I made was a Baltimore oriole.
Oh.
Yeah. That was my favorite bird because I remember in the hurricane of, was it 54? There was a terrific hurricane. Then there were two more in 57 back to back. And I remember watching the nest of the Baltimore oriole just being whipped around in the wind. And, trees were crashing. The whole section of my parents' property, the trees just kept crashing like matchsticks, which is great because then we get a ball field to play in as a result. But after that terrific storm, the Baltimore oriole's nest was still there. And I thought, wow, that's more than amazing. Here are these big, powerful trees that were just toppling like matchsticks in this beautiful little nest that was, all woven together out of grass, hanging from a flexible branch of the elm tree, whipping around in these, I don't know, it was one of the strongest hurricanes that ever hit the East Coast. And there it still was afterwards. And plus, they're beautiful, and they have a beautiful song, and they lived right above my bedroom window. So I think maybe the first one of the endangered species that I made was of Baltimore oriole. And then I just started researching. At first
The list goes on and on and on.
Yeah, I started researching. It was actually in 2018, I think, in early 2018. And I did a whole show. But then I started researching beyond the region. When you type in endangered species of birds, suddenly you get the whole world, And it was later that year I think I did the show in the spring, and later that year, they came out with that incredible study, that 50-year study that we had lost in North America alone 3 billion birds in 50 years. I mean, that's just a mind-boggling amount that is really almost impossible to envision.
Right, you can't.
But it's a lot. and a lot. I mean, if they had said 3 million, that would have been a lot.
Right.
But it was
3
3
billion.
billion. That's in North America alone. That doesn't count the rest of the world. I mean, when are we going to wake up?
The name of our farm, as you know, is Laughing Hummingbird Farm.
I saw that. Where does that come from?
The people we bought the property from, jokingly but seriously, I don't know, they left, there's a hummingbird right there. Can you see him?
Oh, yeah. Oh, my gosh.
He knows we're talking about him. We've never seen that, right?
No, never here.
That's the first time during a podcast we've seen a hummingbird. So they must know. And they said, now here are 3 hummingbird feeders. You have to promise you'll continue to feed the hummingbirds or we won't sell you the property. And
That was among the many conditions
yeah,
that we had to meet to move here. But anyway.
but that was the most fun one.
That is
And-
fun. They put out a hummingbird feeder because they noticed immediately there were hummingbirds. And what they didn't know was that there were 2 different kinds of hummingbirds, and they're aggressive to each other.
Very.
They are.
So they wound up having to put 2 different hummingbird feeders on opposite sides of the yard because of that.
Well, that's what we have. We have 3 on one side of the house and 3 on the other side of the house.
Too many.
No. One of our neighbors has 28. 20. That's like JFK.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It's almost too much to me. So the interesting phenomenon this year, because they're always attacking, I don't know if attacking or playing, and doing all
Whatever it is they do, yeah.
the noises. But there's this one group of 7 hummingbirds that shows up together every
like
night.
a gang.
They're like a gang
I
of
like to think they're coming for a drink at the bar.
of hummingbirds.
Maybe the sugar water has fermented by that
By
time
that, there
of
we
the
go.
day.
No wonder why they're so docile when they arrive here.
So we named the farm Laughing Hummingbird Farm to answer your question because we believe laughter is one of your best tools to heal.
Absolutely.
And hummingbirds represent consciousness, awareness, enlightenment. So we put the 2 together and called it Laughing Hummingbird Farm because of the healing properties that we feel on this.
So how many different kinds of hummingbirds are you able to identify here? Because this region actually not that long ago was designated as basically having one kind of hummingbird, but there are more than that now.
Right.
There's at least 2, and I think more.
There might be 3.
There are 3 that we see here.
The ones with the red necks.
Yeah, ruby
And then-
throat.
Is that what that is? That well, that's a very fitting name for them.
Yeah.
And then there's the smaller ones. I'm not sure what their name is.
Yeah, there's some. I've seen some really tiny. They flash bright blue. And then there's another one that's
There's one other one.
purpley green. I think.
Right.
That's very tiny.
Those are the 3 I've seen.
But I think there are more now because of global warming, because of the climate warming up. So birds that used to be farther south are now
More
coming
north.
north.
Oh.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Like robins never used to spend the winter in Massachusetts. Never. They were the first sign of spring was when the robins came back. Now they stay there all winter.
Really?
Yeah.
To me, there's nothing more beautiful than cardinals in
Oh,
a
yeah.
in a snow covered tree.
Yeah, they're gorgeous. Or flashing in front of bright green foliage. I mean,
Right.
that scarlet streak is just,
And the Baltimore Oriole, I mean, they just...
it's really rare to see one now. Really rare.
My friend who feeds and who listens to the
Did they leave out oranges for them? Is it oranges that you leave out for Baltimore Orioles? I think so.
Is Sue on? What is what does she feed the Baltimore Orioles?
You can ask.
Sue, what do you feed the Baltimore Orioles?
So I'm going to jump in with a little bit of Toots' background.
Okay.
Toots has made a life's work, and I'm paraphrasing the Smithsonian.
Uh-oh.
Toots has made a life's work of traveling, learning, and working in glass. Continually evolving, her art is a constant exploration in color and composition expressed in distinctive, undulating forms. Her vessels are represented in over 100 international museum collections, including the Cooper Hewitt National Design Museum, the Museum of Modern Art, and the Met, all in New York City. The museum, you say that one.
Oh,
How do you say
the French.
The Musée des Arts Décoratifs du Louvre.
Yes, that one. You did that a lot better than I'll probably ever do that.
I don't have my
I speak
glasses, all right.
French.
When he was reading that, he said,
How do you say this one?
how do you say this one?
I know de Louvre, but I still said it wrong, but not the rest. The Museum of Fine Arts, Houston,
Boston.
Texas.
Oh, yeah, Houston, Boston.
The National Gallery of Australia, Canberra, the Smithsonian Museum of American Art, the Renwick Gallery, and the Victoria and Albert Museum, London, and the Hokkaido Museum of Art, Japan. In 2015, you were awarded the Smithsonian Visionary Award, which is given annually to an American artist who has reached the pinnacle of sculptural art and design. Which shows that little.
So tell me what you
That
feel.
was a lovely surprise.
Tell me what you feel when you hear that.
I'm still surprised. It was a lovely surprise.
Did you envision that would be on your introductory list when you first started out?
Never. I never imagined that I would be at the Museum of Modern Art in New York, you know. I got a phone call one night not long after we'd returned from Africa, and people were calling us at all different hours from all over, you know, friends from all over the world, because they knew we'd been gone a long time and we were unreachable. So they were calling to see if we were home yet, or they'd heard we were home. And one night, the phone rang at like 11 o'clock at night, and there was this really soft voice on the other end of the line. It sounded like someone disguising their voice.
Oh,
And they said,
that's a great way to start the conversation.
you know, this is so-and-so, and I'm from the I'm curator at the Museum of Modern Art, and we've acquired one of your works, and we're calling to see if you'd be willing. We'd like to commission another piece.
Oh, sorry, I'm busy.
Yeah.
And I just said, I can't really repeat what I said because I thought it was a friend. But I kind of said, oh, cut it out. Come on, who is this really? But I used a four-letter word, too. And the same soft voice said, this really is so-and-so, and I really am from the Museum of Modern Art. We really do own a piece of your work, and we really would like to commission another one. And I was like, oh, my God, what an idiot I am, you know. I just, you know, it's like, can I go out and come in again, please? And that started like a wonderful, I think it was a wonderful new idea I had about the possibilities ahead of me for my work. I mean, I never imagined that. And this was like the first museum that acquired my work.
Ever.
Or the second.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, the first one was Corning Museum, but they collect glass all the time. But MoMA was just like way up here for me. And I'd never even thought about it. So it was like, it was a real revelation to me to think about my work in another way, and that there were endless possibilities that I'd never really considered, and that I could consider them, you know, and start like just shooting for the stars, you know.
What is the source of your art?
I don't know. Everything. That's the real answer too. It's everything.
And did you always want to be an artist? Was glass always your medium? But wait a minute, I have to ask you. Where does Toots come from?
My brother was 3 years old when I was born, and when I came home, that's what he called me, and that's the name that stuck.
It's stuck.
So it's not actually on my birth certificate, but my parents added it to my legal name because it's all they ever called me. It's all anyone ever called me, except a few teachers in school, because my full name, I'm named after. The reason I haven't dropped the rest of my name is because I'm named after two of my grandmothers who I loved a lot. And so I've never wanted to drop that. It just felt like I would be abandoning them or something.
So what's the full name?
Mary Ann Toots Zynsky.
Beautiful.
It's a lot.
No, I love long, beautiful names.
It's a lot.
So I'm trying to get in your head a little bit for the
Don't let him in.
inspiration. I just smile when I look at your artwork.
Well, that's nice.
It makes me so happy. And
That's nice to hear.
we were looking at pictures and we were just saying, oh my God, this is so beautiful. Oh my God, this is so beautiful. Is that part of the piece in your head to elicit that kind of reaction?
I don't sort of consciously think about that. I make what I want to make, and actually the first thing I wanted to be was a dancer.
Huh.
And there was just no place I come from a small New England town. There was no place to study dance. So I didn't really spend much time watching television unless I was sick or something. I didn't like sitting still that long. But I would go through like WGBH or whatever it was called then to see Jacques Cousteau specials and
Cousteau.
anything about dance. And I would watch the dance and I would go outside and practice and practice and practice till I got like the leap that they had done or the spin or whatever. And I was terrified of the dark when I was a kid, but I would go out in the dark in the backyard and have my mother turn the back light on and watch me so that I could keep practicing after dark. But so then I did sports because there was no dance. So I would do every sport that meant I could run or jump or leap. So, I was the center forward on the basketball team because I loved to jump. And, I did broad jump, high jump, and hurdles. I mean, anything that meant jumping, I loved, and moving.
Have you ever thought about why you like to jump so much?
I don't know, maybe I was a bird or an animal in another life or something.
Do you feel free when you're jumping or in the air?
Oh, always.
Yes.
Always. Fantastic. And I also loved music. So I started playing piano when I was 3 years old. And I played very seriously till I was 14, but I realized that, and I always loved art. But that was kind of third.
Wow.
Because it meant sitting still.
Because it what?
It meant sitting still.
Ah.
And that wasn't something I was good at. But by the time I was 14, I realized that I loved music, but my imagination didn't create music.
Wow.
And, maybe at the time if I had a wonderful piano teacher, and maybe if he had sort of kind of told me that there was an enormous creativity in interpreting someone else's music, that could have changed my life then. But I would try and compose music. I just couldn't,
Did you ever think about being a conductor and all that
No.
movement?
No.
So you said art was third on your list.
No. But, I've spent a lot of time, still doing, drawing and learning how to paint and just making things. I mean, we're always making things. And so I decided when I was about 11, I knew by the time I was 11 that I wasn't a composer of music. And we did art in school, and I always did well, and I enjoyed it and was encouraged about it. And so I decided, well, that's where I'm going. And
at 11.
Yeah.
So I'll give you a little bit of my background. Guests are afraid of me because I always ask them the tough, difficult, annoying questions that they usually don't want to answer. So here, I'm gonna wallop you with one of them now. So you said art was third on your list. Do you feel that it seems like this has become your life's work? Looking back, do you feel any regret choosing the third thing on your list as your...
No. I love dance. My granddaughter at 2 declared that she was a dancer, and she dances.
We're all the best dancers when we're
for
2.
hours every week. And she's 14 already. So my son called me up one day and said, "Mom, you're going to love this." And I said, "What?" And he said, "Well, Zoe just declared that she's a dancer. Not, I want to learn how to dance. I'm a dancer, and I need to take lessons so I can learn how to dance better."
Wow.
Yeah. Be very clear about it. No, I don't regret it. I've had a wonderful life, I mean, I've been very involved with dance. I love it. I love to go watch it. I love everything from, tribal to classical to contemporary, everything.
Well, I think your art dances.
Oh, well, thank you.
It's an interesting thing. Yeah, that's true.
I was on the board of what's now Ballet Rhode Island. It was Festival Ballet for a long time, for 20 years. I was on the board and then chairman of the board finally there. I love dance. I think it's one of the toughest art forms.
And even difficult to appreciate for a lot of people.
Yeah, that too. But as far as the person that's doing it, it's the toughest art form. I mean, it's just brutal on your body. They're in pain.
The whole time.
A lot. And they keep having to rehearse. I remember living in Vermont, and a neighbor's, friend came up from New York City. She was New York City Ballet or ABT maybe. And every day she was out there dancing on the lawn, and doing exercise. And I said, "Wow, you never get to take vacation." She said, "I'll injure myself if I don't, stay in shape." So, and I watch the dance. I watch the injuries they get, and sometimes it's career stopping.
Oh.
I mean, I've seen
been tons of movies about that. 2 or 3
of my favorite dancers in the company, really fine dancers. I watched one of them land on stage and then
cripple.
We all knew something was wrong because we knew what the choreography was. And she very gracefully got herself off the stage, but she had torn her she had torn some major thing, and that was it. Her career was gone. She was only like 21.
Oh.
And she'd been dancing since she was really young. I mean, that's what happens. It can just in a moment, boom. So it's a tough career.
Did she define herself by her dancing?
Well, I mean, it's
Was it
an
tough?
essential part of who you are. It's not even a choice at a point. It's just who you are and what you do and what you have to do. You wake up every day and that's what you have to do.
Do you love what you do?
Yeah. I wouldn't do it if I didn't.
Right.
I mean, it's not fun.
No?
No.
Yeah, why don't tell us the process?
Tell us the process.
Tell us,
It's not
so
fun.
how did this...
I mean, but to get back to the connection between dance and why I chose glass, because I really, after the end of my freshman year, which was a basic foundation year, it's changed a lot now. RISD has definitely evolved, but it was more of an isolated program. unique unto itself in the school back in the days when I was there as a freshman. And at the end of the year, you had to choose a major. But it's like, what? How do we choose a major? So I really suddenly wasn't sure. I mean, we were in school with, as freshmen with these kids who had come from 4 years of art and design in New York. They were, we had like an hour or two of art class in high school, and you had to fight to get that. So here are these kids who had 4 years of art and design high school, and they looked like artists. They knew artists that we had never heard of. They seemed to be light years ahead of us with their work. They understood the assignments when, the rest of us were going, do you understand the assignment we were just given, And you'd have to really sort of think about it. And finally, if you were lucky, your subconscious would understand what the assignment was so you could do it. But by the end of the year, I thought, what was I thinking? Just because I was like the second best at drawing at my little high school, that meant I should be an artist. And so I thought, I think I need a time out here. And really maybe rethink this whole thing. Maybe I shouldn't have decided when I was 11 years old that I was going to be an artist. And I remember that I was 11 because I was in 5th grade, and I was standing in the hallway with 3 friends making some, panorama for this, the school had a showcase. And these teachers came up and said, oh, blah, 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 what do you want to be when you grow up? And everyone else is like, oh, I want to be a doctor so I can help people, or I want to be a nurse so I can help people. I want to be a teacher so I can help people. And they looked at me, and I said, I'm an artist, and I'm going to Rhode Island School of Design.
In 5th grade?
Yeah, and they just sort of,
wow,
like, who are you? But yeah, I was very clear about it, or thought I was.
Well, you did it.
And I did it. I got the book, and I found out what I needed to do to qualify to get in, and that's what I aimed for.
So you said you had a wonderful life, and I know you've traveled a lot throughout this wonderful life, but I want to go back to the beginning. How did you end up developing this as your unique style of glasswork?
Well, I started out at the end of my freshman year. They were just creating a small glass studio on campus. They'd had a small one out in a farm, one of the ceramic professor's farms. But suddenly, I made a tour of the whole campus to see what I was withdrawing from. I took a leave of absence. I didn't just quit. I just thought I needed more time to think about it. And actually started looking at pre-med programs.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. But just as I was leaving, I made a tour of the whole school, and the last thing I came to, I was just looking on the map. I got the map from Buildings and Ground of every building that RISD owned, and I went to every building. And it was the end of the day. I was on the top floor of one of the main buildings, studio buildings there, and I was just looking for the stairway, and it was at the opposite end of the hallway from where I had come in, and I was up on the 4th floor, so I wanted to get out and down. And there was a double doorway, and as I opened those double doors, there was just this roar and this loud music playing, and there were people sort of dashing in and out suddenly. And I'm like, what's going on here? And I looked in, and they were all in wild drag. And this is 1970. Drag wasn't accepted or just common like it is now. They were in wild drag.
What is drag?
When men dress up in ladies' clothes.
Okay.
Yeah. And I mean,
there you go. I live under a rock.
They were actually in outrageous drag. And
I got it.
And so all the other studios were finishing up for the year, and everyone was busily finishing projects and sitting down and quiet, and everything was intensely quiet. And I'm like, not this, and not this. And then I came to that, and they were I looked in and they were like swinging around hot glass through the air, these tubes of hot molten glass, and they weren't crashing into each other. And there was this wild music playing, and it just looked like this phenomenal choreography going on, this spontaneous choreography. And it just looked like amazing fun, too. And so I watched for quite a while, and then I, had somewhere else to go, so I went. And the next day, I ran into one of the guys on the street that had been participant. And, we were the only two people on the street and walking towards each other. And he stopped and he said, "Oh, wasn't that you I saw looking in yesterday?" I said, "Yeah, it looked really interesting." And he said, "Well, come on down and try it if you want. We're trying to get students for next year." And I didn't tell him, well, I've already withdrawn from school. I just wanted to try it. So I did, and it was just fascinating. It was just so alive. And I knew that there was probably something I really wanted to do with it. I was totally intrigued. But I did stay out. I stayed out till the spring semester of the following year and did look at pre-med programs, and it just kept bugging me, that I had worked so hard to get into RISD, and there was this one thing that maybe I wanted to do. So I thought, well, I'll go back and I'll give it a real try. I'll put everything into being there for one semester and seeing if there's something to really, hold on to with it, or if it's just an infatuation, because it is incredibly infatuating to watch, hot glass being manipulated. And so I just hawked the
Magical,
studio.
actually.
And every time someone didn't show up for their blowing time, I took that time too. And I'd come really early. I'd get up and watch the professor and his assistant. They started working at 4 a.m. So I'd get up and be there at 4 a.m. and watch.
Why? What's the point of so early?
Because that was their blowing slot, because it was quiet and the glass is fresh. They got the best fresh glass.
Oh.
And it was before the student scheduling started at 8 o'clock. So I would get up and watch them blow, and I learned so much from it because they were both very different how they worked. One was like Zen glass blowing, and the other was just wild energy glass blowing. So it was an interesting combination to understand how they both were able to do what they did in such different ways with the same material.
And did the Zen guy use music also?
There was usually music in the glass studio, yeah. And sometimes not, it just depended. But by the end of the semester, I was pretty well hooked. And then, the professor had a plan to go out and build a summer school on the West Coast for glass blowing, kind of like Haystack School up in Maine, but just pretty much for glass, but also other media. And so he asked some of us to go out with him. And I had other things to do. I had some really good propositions that summer, actually. And I was full on to do one of those. And I didn't realize that no one really ever said no to him. And so he was intrigued. That I was like, no, I've got really great plans for this summer. I said,
I'm intrigued. What were the plans?
You've got, you've got plenty of people. Everyone's like, please choose me, But I was working so hard because I'd given myself one semester that was like do or die. If by the end of this semester I haven't been able to get a handle on this, or I've decided that it's just infatuation, but there's not really anything more I want to do with it, then I am leaving and I am going to pre-med school. So I was just, but he liked hard workers, and he also needed them to build a school. So he set 3 older, really good-looking guys after me to convince me to come out there. And I did. I wound up doing that. And it was great. It was my first 4 of us drove cross country in a van with some of the essential equipment that we needed. And it was just a fantastic trip.
Did you stop along the way?
Oh yeah, we plotted our trip carefully because we had 1 week, and it was the week before the national parks opened.
Oh,
So, which meant you could camp anywhere you wanted in those days. So we knew that what we were going to do is drive around the clock until take turns, the 4 of us, 2 sleeping and 1 navigating, 1 driving, until we got to the Rocky Mountains, and then we would start stopping overnight. So that's what we did, and it was a phenomenal trip, just unbelievable trip. And then we built the school, and it rained most of the time. It's north
You
of
built the
Seattle.
school by hand? Or
How else would you do it?
with cranes and concrete and...
We started with shovels in the pasture.
Wow.
Yeah, in the rain. And then we did it.
and you have no idea what the rainy season is out there. It is torrential.
They wish it still were that way.
I know.
Because I was there last fall, and the whole time all we smelled was smoke from the big forest fires burning. It was pretty scary. Yeah, I thought, do I really want to be here? Yeah. No, but they had intense rain in those years. And finally, after 6 weeks, it stopped and the sun came out, and it's just so gloriously beautiful. We were up in the foothills of the Cascade Mountains, and when the sun came out, we could see Mount Rainier to the south, 100 miles to the south. I mean, that mountain is so huge and so beautiful.
Wow.
It still amazes me every time I go there how big it is.
Is the school still standing?
Yeah, just in 2021 celebrated its 50th anniversary.
Wow.
Wow.
That's incredible.
And it's expanded, and we did a good job.
Yeah, right. If it's still there, it's you must have done a good job.
Yeah, it was a good idea. And, when something's really a good idea, a lot of people are attracted and lean into it and feed it more energy so it keeps going.
I have many questions, but this just popped into my head. Are artists competitive?
It depends on the artist. I mean, in certain ways, maybe, yeah, but it's more competitive with yourself, I think, to just keep, evolving.
Are there other people that do something similar to this, or are you the only person?
No, I developed this technique.
So could you tell us how you developed the technique?
Well, it evolved because along the way I learned every other method of glass forming. And it's a fascinating material because you can do with glass, you can do anything with glass that you can do with any other material. And there's no other material that you can say that about. You can carve it, you can cast it, you can pour it, you can blow it. It sticks to itself. That sounds silly, but it's a really important quality, that something can stick and adhere to itself.
We humans should do that.
So it has, it's endlessly fascinating. It also uses, I knew that I didn't want to only blow glass, but it was the only entry into working with material when I started at school. And over the years, the program has evolved to enable students to deal with it in any way in all the many ways that you can. But when I get out, running a furnace means you have to be pretty permanent in some place. And I've always been pretty nomadic. So that didn't seem like a good option. So even before I left RISD, I had, I would still step in and blow glass just to keep up the skill and because it's enjoyable. But I had already started doing many other things with it. And I didn't want to be confined to a blowpipe. And so I started just doing a lot of experiments with like large slumped plate glass, and I wanted to make larger sculptures. And then I stopped for 6 years completely and just dealt with other materials, mostly kind of ephemeral materials, and space and light and movement, air movement and sound. Sometimes video. The end result was a video. And sometimes it was just something in the landscape. I was living up in Vermont. I wasn't documenting it. It felt very free. It felt very free and wonderful. And then one day a friend called up and said, "Okay, time's up. You need to come back and work with glass." And I went, "Well, I actually had an idea, and I kept dancing around it, and finally realized that I was avoiding the fact, or trying to deny the fact that the only thing that element of the sculpture could be made of was glass." And I went, "Okay, I'll come," and that sort of got me going again. I got bitten again. Yeah.
I guess once you
It's
find
very seductive material.
yeah.
And sometimes we all hate it, I mean, when you can get through a whole project, no matter what way you're working with it, in what manner you're working with it, you can get through a whole project and then do something wrong and you break it, or someone knocks into it, it's like aha. So it can also be very frustrating. I think everyone that works with glass has a love-hate relationship with it. Mine's mostly a love relationship. And
you must have very careful interns and assistants then.
We've had accidents.
What was the biggest one?
Any of yours? Was anything of yours destroyed in one of these? What did that feel like?
Like,
Because wait a minute, it takes
like nothing to do, There's nothing to do about it. When something is
right.
You've poured a week of your life
it's
and
smashed, and that's it. And if you can't get past that, then you can't work with this material.
Right.
a week of life.
It's like you can't go sailing and not expect at some point to go into really cold water. Then you shouldn't be sailing. It's
what is.
Yeah.
So the reason I love sailing, and I've been sailing for 3 years, is because of the freedom. And I know this word keeps coming up a lot in this conversation, because when you're out on the water, the rest of the world falls away. And if you're in a position, especially in the boats I sail, where you're hanging out over the side of the boat, you're not even in it.
Right.
You're flying.
Yeah.
You're really flying. So it seems like you've always been searching for freedom. Did you feel oppressed at some point in your life?
No. I just always wanted more freedom.
Do you know why?
Well, I ran free as a child. We had this beautiful woodland that went quite far in all directions. And looking out over the marshland, there were no buildings that we could see. It's a pretty extensive marshland. Now, unfortunately, they've allowed building where they shouldn't have in the wetlands. But it was our eternity, as far as we could paddle in a canoe, to explore the little islands, that was all that we could see. And we were free when we were there. Our parents were out of hearing range. One of them had a bell, and we thought that was so obnoxious. And
you don't have a bell, but however, even with you sitting here, I'll say, when your parents are around, there is a different kind of feeling.
Even
if they're not being
it's funny because our parents were, I would say our parents were fairly protective in many ways, but when we were in the woods, we were just free. And we'd get up at 6 a.m. in the summertime, and we'd meet down in the woods, and we were just like wild.
Wild.
And we were wild. We didn't come home until, sometimes a parent would come down in the woods to get us, One parent would start ringing the bell, and it's like, do you hear a bell? No, I don't hear a bell. And we know it's really time for all of us to go in for supper, but we didn't care. I mean, our parents were like background material. They fed us, and yeah, we knew that we had a warm house because of them, and and they sort of, sometimes it was just a nuisance to have to go home for lunch. We didn't care about eating. We just wanted to keep playing, or climbing trees, or digging trenches, or all building forts, everything we were doing.
That was my biggest thing when I was a kid. Building forts.
Oh, yeah. That's fantastic. And you don't need parents for that.
No. At our beach house, you would leave in the morning and not see them until dinner time. That was it.
Yeah.
All day long. And I didn't feel like, oh my God, I have to see them. It was like, this really
we
feels
were just
good.
Fine. We were fine.
Which is very different from in the city, where it felt like they were micromanaging you all the time because of school and lessons.
Safety.
Safety.
Traffic,
Yeah.
I mean.
You can't run in the street.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a very different thing. I suddenly wound up being a parent on a mountain, from being a parent on a mountainside in the countryside to being a parent in New York City. And I realized I don't really know how to do this. This is a whole different paradigm, and I don't get it. And it's a lot of the reason when I went to Europe 3 years later, I had a 3-week ticket. I had gotten permission to take my son, who was 7, out of school for 3 weeks. And the principal was great. He said, I think it's a wonderful educational experience.
Oh, you were fortunate.
And we never came back. I got to Europe, and, the kids were playing in the street. They were obviously safe. That was Amsterdam. Then we went to Italy, and, kids are just like cherished in Italy and playing in the streets. And for the first time, I felt my whole being relax because I wasn't tense about my son. And, where was he?
I don't know when I would say I feel the most free. I'm not sure. Sailing is up there on the list, but there's also a freeness to being in a room with your eyes closed. I know we talked about meditation earlier.
Yeah.
So when do you feel the most free?
It's a state of body. It's also a state of mind.
When do you feel the most free?
Probably swimming in the ocean, or just being on a beach alone with, that vast
potentiality
space in front of you.
So in contrast,
But, I also spent a summer being very ill with a strange autoimmune disease post-COVID. And I couldn't read. I had no energy to get out of bed. I couldn't eat. I drank water and I ate salt-free saltine crackers because everything else tasted like poison. It took them 2 months to figure out what was wrong with me. And it was hot. It was summer. And the days were beautiful. And, the birds were singing and the breeze was going through the house. I opened all the French doors upstairs, and I just lay there in bed, and I'd wake up in the morning and go, oh, what am I going to do today? I feel great, And then I realized I can't do anything. I had no energy. And I was either asleep or I was just lying there awake. And actually, it was like this luxury vacation because I would just lie there and either daydream. And I had been kind of, the couple of years prior to that going, God, I don't have any time to daydream anymore. I'm so busy all the time, I really miss daydreaming. It's a really important part of creation and of creating. And so there I was, I had all the time in the world to daydream. So I thought, Well, now you've got what you asked for, so enjoy it.
You manifested that.
You know,
Toots.
and sometimes, actually, you know, when you, for days and days, there's nothing you can do. I mean, luckily I wasn't in pain. So I was just like, my mind was just free.
No guilt?
No what?
No guilt
Guilt?
in the sense that
Why would I feel guilty?
because you weren't doing anything.
I couldn't do anything. So
Right.
there was no reason to feel guilty. It wasn't like I had chosen to do nothing and be lazy or, you know, not do something I was supposed to do. I had no choice. So that took away any guilt factor, which was perfect. And I, you know, often was in a perfect state that everyone aspires to in meditation, which is a completely empty mind, like not a thought, just empty mind. And it's quite a beautiful state to be in. So it was, it wasn't the summer I would have chosen, but it was an exceptional summer that I just had time for the first time. It changed my whole sense of time, which is good. Time became circular instead of linear.
What does that mean?
Well, I think, you know, in the contemporary Western world, time is this linear thing where you're here and you're always heading in
Towards
this
the end.
line towards towards into the future, whatever that is, and you have a path, and you know you're doing something, and you have goals, you know, and instead, a time became circular again. So that it really didn't matter if something happened yesterday or a week before or tomorrow. It was kind of all in the same circle. It wasn't like you were leaving anything behind because you were always moving forward and leaving things behind. It was just all always there, everything. And that was, I think, really important to rediscover that, because I think that's how children see the world and experience the world. And why kids don't miss things. You know, we're sort of always hurrying through time in a line, and we miss a lot in every way, both physical and spiritual. And so it was a total reset, in fact. So it was actually a great summer.
Did your artwork change or take a different form after that summer? Did you change?
I'm not sure. Probably, you know, it's.
I don't really like to use the word change because I think it's more an awareness of yourself.
You know, sometimes I did no thinking, and sometimes I had time just to sort of think, you know, kind of stream of consciousness kind of thinking, and sometimes more like rational thought and thinking about things, and you know, why am I doing this, and why have I always been doing it this way, and is this what I want to do going forward? I mean, that's rational thinking, you know. And sometimes it's just totally imaginary, you know, free stream of consciousness kind of thoughts and words. And
Did you journal anything that summer?
no.
So you were in the moment in the experience.
No, the only thing I journaled that summer, and I've never done that before. I've never kept a diary. I've never done that. Was I started keeping a journal from the very beginning, because the beginning was so distinct of this strange illness that I started, and from one night to the next morning, I could hardly even walk downstairs, you know, and then to get back up, I had to have someone help me. And finally, I sometimes if when it was a nice day, I would get help to go and sit outside for half an hour just to be outdoors. But I knew that something was really wrong because it was so sudden and so stunning and so dynamic, the change, that I started just, I would get a fever that would start usually at sundown, and it would last for X amount of hours, and it would be this much, and then I would get a strange sort of shimmering headache that just went you could feel that it was just your cranium, and just on the surface of it, it would just be like this shimmering hand that would go vroop and then be gone. It was so bizarre. And I thought, these are very weird symptoms. And then, I'd get a rash on half of my body. And then so I started just keeping track of it because no one could figure out what was wrong with me. So by the time I'd gone through lots and lots of tests and a lot of procedures and more tests, and I had this whole journal written down. And so by the time they were about to put me in the ICU, because they said, we just need you here around the clock, because they never let me know how serious it was, but it was really serious. And they called in this absolutely genius infectious disease specialist. So I had this whole journal for him. And he had also committed to memory in less than 2 days, the morning that he was going to see me. He had committed to memory all the tests that had been done on me. And it was a
Good for
lot.
him.
Yeah, he's
Incredible.
probably, he was beyond smart. The guy was a genius, and they told me he was a genius. And I've never had a conversation with anybody like him. He was very special. And he put all that together, and all those details that didn't seem to mean anything all added up for him to understanding what I had. Because what I had you can't test for, as it turns out.
And they were clearly able to solve it.
Yeah, with massive doses of steroids.
Wow. Did you see anything interesting when you were receiving the steroids?
No, I just suddenly went from sleeping like 22 hours a day, or being just still and in bed for 22 hours a day, to being like having this wild energy and being totally ADHD. I started Marie Kondoing the whole house. I'd go to sleep at midnight and I'd wake up at 2 a.m. and going, okay, what am I going to do now? I could not sit still. So I just started, literally opening drawers and rearranging them, and,
Well, at least you ended up with a
closets
cleaner house for the end of it, right?
sort of. Yeah, it was, the whole thing was just this unbelievable experience of, going overnight from being pretty okay, a little bit tired, like, what's wrong with me? I'm getting tired, to like being almost immobile.
Yeah.
And then 2 months later, the opposite within hours of giving these massive doses of steroids. So it was just kind of a wild experience.
I tapped you because it's already 8:56 somehow, and I've never felt it. Like, people always say they sit here, an hour's gone by. How's that possible? So I've never felt that before until just now sitting here. So it's already been an hour.
So I did get back to work. I wanted to get back to work. And it took time. It took time because I couldn't stand. I stand sometimes 12 to 14 hours a day working on these pieces, because once I'm, focused, I don't want to stop. I don't want to lose my train of thought with them. And I could only stand for like an hour and a half.
That's still quite a while.
Standing still, doing something. Well, compared to 12 hours, it's nothing, you know. So it was a little bit frustrating at first how long it would take to make a piece and keep my train of thought with the piece. It took quite a while for that to come back because it took about 1.5 years to get off the steroids.
Wow.
But then it happened, you know. And I just kept thinking, well, if it doesn't happen, I'll have to figure out something else to do with my life. There's always something else to do, right? There's a million things to do. Yeah, you make a choice and you focus on something, but there's a lot of other things to do.
Always.
Always.
As we near the end, we always ask our guests this question. If you could give one piece of advice to your great, great, great grandchildren, what would it be?
Don't hesitate to try something. Don't hesitate to ask. If you never give someone the opportunity to say yes to you, you'll never know if you were going to be able to do that or not.
Most people are always afraid to ask, and I'm one of them. You know, we've been doing this show for a year, and every time I ask, it's difficult. I'm afraid.
Yeah. I mean, we all are like, what if they say no? Well,
What does it matter?
it's automatically a no if you don't ask.
Right.
Then it's a no. You've made the no by not asking and not, I mean, what's the worst someone can say to you? No? You know? And, then you go try something else. But if you don't try, it's never going to happen, right? So don't be afraid to try.
I will. I'm going to use that this week. Toots, I feel like we've barely scratched the surface of your story, but
Well,
we didn't talk about your travels. We didn't talk about the collections. We didn't talk about anything that we could have. But I know your schedule can be very conflicting, so we greatly appreciate the time you've taken
well,
to
it's always
come see
fun.
us. Yes. Thank you very, very much.
Well, it's a pleasure to me, too. You should come and visit the studio sometime.
Absolutely. We'd love that.
And thank you for your artwork.
My God, it's mesmerizing.
It really touches a lot of people from what we read and ourselves. We don't even have to go beyond.
I love glass.
Yeah.
I love glass. The reason I love glass is strange. Is because for the chai thing that we ended up serendipitously meeting through, we were deciding glass or plastic. And I was telling you I don't like plastic. But watching the glass bottles be made, zoop, zoop,
That's
zoop,
amazing.
through the machine, and they make
amazing.
thousands of them.
It's amazing.
It's nothing like this, of course, but amazing.
So
Amazing.
one
nonetheless.
thing that you've just learned is that I'm very good at avoiding talking about my artwork.
We love that.
We'll hold you to that next time. I won't let you get away with it. I'll go into my mean question.
No, actually, part of it is that
Oh, I'll put an end to
if
the
you
thing.
say too much, then people are automatically they're inhibited for thinking what
it is.
reacting to it the way they would if you hadn't said anything about it.
Ladies and gentlemen who are with us, I'm introducing a new segment at the end of this, so we're going to take a quick break and we'll be back. Take an intermission, grab a cup of coffee, because after this, you and I are just going to chat for a minute. So, Toots, thank you very much again. I've got to go push a button.
Me.
All right, for everyone still with us, thank you so much for waiting for us. We just finished up saying goodbye to Toots, and welcome to this new segment. I guess we'll call it the after show. In the future, the wait won't be so long. We'll be back a little sooner than this, but, well, I guess first time is mistakes. So what'd you think?
Wait a minute. Did I approve the after show
No.
or even know about it?
No.
Okay.
I just did it.
Okay. I mean, the reason why we do this podcast is because I'm so interested in what motivates people, what they think, how they got to where they are. And what struck me the most was I am a dancer. I am an artist. Not I want to be. Do you remember when she said that? And how impressed she was with her granddaughter for not saying, I want to be it. She said, I am it. And I think it's that that motivation in you, or that gives you the driving force when you're doubting yourself or thinking, should I do something else? And if you can just take that step back and really know deep inside, I am this and not I want to be this. That was great.
I found the desire for freedom interesting. I'm sure as you could tell from my line of questioning. Interesting.
There again, if we just give ourselves the space and just don't judge yourself. Like,
She doubted herself a lot. She almost wasn't going to do this. She was going to leave.
this was third on her list. That's amazing.
And she's found so much success in building something absolutely beautiful. Oh, this table feels empty now. We'll bring the flowers back next week. No worries. They're not gone forever. Thank you to everyone who commented tonight. I was so engrossed in the conversation that I didn't get to read them, but I promise you, next episode, we will be doing many more comments from you and accepting callers, hopefully again in the future. So everyone, thank you very much for tuning in this evening, and we'll see you next Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Michael Robert Live. If you have any requests or a question, leave it in the comments below. Thank you, guys. Have a great night.
Have a great week, everyone. Thank you.
Go push the button.